Hello! So, this week, taking another trip down memory lane. I'll talk about how I got into certain Nintendo franchises, or how I became a fan of them. Now, Nintendo has a lot of IPs, some of which get less attention than others, Star Fox. And then there are ones that are there's ones that are extremely popular that I never really got into, like Animal Crossing and Xenoblade Chronicles, just to mention a couple. The cat just jumped up over here. But out of all the IPs that I'm a fan of, I wanted to focus on the ones that have, kind of more interesting stories, so to speak. So let's start with Metroid. Now, this goes back to the year 1994, which was a great year for the Super Nintendo, but that's a whole other story. And so it was I think the end of spring, late spring, early summer. Super Metroid was released on the Super Nintendo, and where was I going with this? Oh yeah, my family and I went to BJ's, which I think BJ's is only in the New England states, but I could be wrong about that. So, for those who are unfamiliar with it, it's kind of like Walmart, but it's more like a warehouse type of thing. But anyway, we had went there, and my brother got Super Metroid along with Metroid on the NES, and we also got the movie We're Back, A Dinosaur Story. Remember that? The animated Spielberg movie with the dinosaurs? And I remember that came with a little thing of stickers that had the 4 dinosaurs and then what the heck was that? The little green guy, I forget his name. It's on the tip of my tongue. Oh, whatever. So I remember my brother's friend Matt was there that day. So I remember each of us picked out one of the stickers, one of the dinosaurs, and then we drew this little picture and put them all on it, and then put it up in the window or something. But anyway, yeah, I used to watch my brother play Super Metroid all the time. And then he let me have a guy on it, and I absolutely loved that game. I still do. It's probably my favorite first-party title on the Super Nintendo. And where was I going with this? Yeah, but like I said, he let me have a guy on it. I loved playing it. I loved watching him play it. I think I got as far as at least for when I was playing it, I got as far, I was 7, 8 years old back then. I got as far as the wrecked ship, I believe. Then years later, I got more into it and stuff. And I over the years that went by, I never really got into the Prime games. I've talked about them before. I just don't really like Metroid as a first-person shooter. I remember playing one of them on the GameCube with my brother. We were doing the deathmatch or multiplayer or whatever. But other than that, I don't know. I just never really liked Metroid as a first-person shooter. I did play some of the other ones, so Metroid The Other M, which is kind of the black sheep of the franchise. And then there was all the remakes, and then there was Metroid Dread and stuff. Yeah, I even went back and played some of the ones I missed, like Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime Hunters, I believe it was called. The one that was on the DS, that was a launch title. But let's move on to the next one. That's Kirby. Now, it's funny, this year is Kirby's 30th anniversary. I actually didn't really get into his games until, my teen years. The only one I remember playing as a kid in the 90s was Kirby's Dream Course, because my brother rented it. Remember that Kirby, golf game? It's an okay game, even now. I was actually just playing it the other night. It's an okay... I'm just not really a big golf person. I like mini golf, and even driving ranges can be kind of fun, but golf in general is really not my thing, so naturally I'm not really a fan of golf games. But it was years later, in 1999, when the original Super Smash Bros. Came out for the N64, and my brother had rented it, and then, this was during the time, the Pokemon craze, so naturally I picked Pikachu a lot. And I remember, what the hell was I going to say? Pikachu, as time went on, I know I'm all over the place. I think it's the heat. Oh yeah, Christmas of 2000, I got an N64, and one of the first games I bought was Super Smash Brothers. And again, like I played as Pikachu a lot, but then I started playing out as some of the other characters. I remember probably my top characters, at least on the original, were Kirby, Pikachu, Link, and Yoshi. Like I said, I started playing as other characters. I'm like, oh, those characters are a pretty cool fighter and stuff. And then I remember playing as Kirby. I'm like, wow, Kirby is awesome. Like, funny. I remember, like, you know, his whole copy ability of like and stuff was cool, and he had great moves. I remember in the first game, his stone ability, he was actually invincible. So it was like a great way to avoid. It was like a cheap little strategy to avoid. What the heck's his name? Master Hand's like powerful moves and stuff. You know, naturally, starting with melee, they took that out, so he can actually be hurt when he's in the stone mode. He's no longer invincible, which is actually a good thing that they changed that, but that's beside the point. You know, it's been like that in all the other games, but, yeah, so anyway, like I said, Kirby became a huge favorite of mine, and it was shortly after this that I saw the trailer, or the commercial, I should say, on TV for Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, and I was like, oh, I gotta, you know, it was a brand new game at the time, so I was like, oh, I gotta rent that, so I did, and I beat it. But that, to this day, that's my favorite Kirby game of all time. You know, and I remember I rented that all the time, and I did finally get, I think my brother got it for me for Christmas one year. I still have it. But yeah, and it's funny, because I'm surprised they never revisited the concept of that game, where you could, that was one of the, I feel like each Kirby game has like its own unique gimmick, and that one, the gimmick was that you could combine two abilities together, even though it was kind of unique to that game. I feel like they should bring it back, because it was just such a cool gimmick. But I was like, I think some of my favorites were, when it came to combining abilities, was like Bomb and Cutter, which made like explosive shuriken, and then there was Fire and Bomb, which is like, he turns into fireworks, and then there was Cutter and Rock, where he turned into like, basically he like carved himself into like these stone carvings of like different Kirby rock characters, like, which was kind of cool. You know, then like, I think it was later that year, there was, or maybe it was the following year, it was Kirby Nightmare and Dream, yeah, I think it was the following year now, I think of it, 2002. It was Kirby Nightmare and Dreamland, which was like a remake of the classic NES game. I remember I asked for that for Christmas, which I did get. You know, then as the years went on, I started playing a lot of his other games, like Kirby Air Ride was one of the first GameCube games I got when I got the GameCube for Christmas in 2004. That was one of the games I got with it. The list goes on and on, but, you know, Kirby has always been, I've always been, you know, well, for at least the past 20 years, I've been a huge fan. Next is Pokemon, which, oh, this is one of the spin-off games, but that's beside the point. With Pokemon, it was, I've told the story before, but whatever, you never know who might have forgotten, or who somebody new was watching. This all started back in 1998, when I was in 5th grade, and I remember seeing a commercial, which, this commercial, this is the kind of memory I have. Like, I have the memory of I know it's a figure of speech, like elephants have a strong, you know, memory of an elephant. That's literally me. I have such a strong memory. You know, even with some of these videos, my brother's like, how the hell do you remember that stuff that happened like 30 years ago or whatever? But, what was I going with this? Yeah, there was a commercial that I know I remember seeing it. Like, even though I looked all over YouTube and the internet and I cannot find it, but I know I remember seeing it. It was a commercial for Pokemon, where a bunch of them were like in a living room, and then they all started being sucked into a tornado, and, you know, then it revealed that the tornado was coming from a Game Boy, and like, you know, Pikachu was hanging onto a curtain, and then Pikachu inevitably got sucked in, and it's like, you know, there's only one place to catch 150 Pokemon or something, and then it's like shows like 15 seconds of gameplay, and then it's like, you know, shows the whole like display thing, like Pokemon Blue and Red, now available on the original Game Boy, or something like that. But like I said, it was one of those commercials that I know it exists, even though I can't find it. Maybe one day it'll resurface, but I know I definitely remember seeing that on TV. You know, the one most people are familiar with is the one on the bus, I think, or the one with Drake Bell. But Or, unless that was the same commercial. Maybe, I don't know, I'm mixing all up. But like I said, I remember seeing that one in the living room. Anyway, it was around the third time seeing that commercial. My sister walked by. It was in the living room because I was like, it was a big doorway in my mom's house, like the big doorway into the living room. So my sister walked by and she's like, there's like a TV show of that. And I was like, oh really? When's it on? And she's like, oh, it's on channel 14, which is our cable version of back when it was UPN. She's like at 3:30. So I was like, oh, I'll have to check it out. So then the next day, it's probably about 3:45, and I was like, oh, I forgot about that show. So I put it on. It was the episode The Waterflowers of Cerulean City, right in the middle of the battle between Ash and Misty just started, and it was funny. I remember because at the time this was just this new thing to me, this new show franchise thing or something. And it was like, when Ash was like, Pikachu, you're supposed to be on my side, and I was like, hey, that's the one for the commercial that was hanging onto the curtain, because like I said, I didn't know their names at the time. This was just a new thing to me. But at that moment, I was hooked, and I watched the show like every day after school, unless I got detention, which sucked. But and then eventually, I think my family went to the mall, and I think it was still Software Etc. at the time, and I bought Pokemon Blue, and then over time I would buy like the toys. I got into the cards, and just I'm obsessed with it for years. I'm not as crazy about the franchise as I once was. Like, I'll always have a special place in my heart for it, but like, I'm not as obsessed with it once was, which is funny because it's like, I think I mentioned this in another video. I was like, the games, the mainline ones, I still enjoy the occasional spin-off, but like the mainline ones we're getting kind of stale for me. But then it's like, it seems like the direction they might be going in, because we've only seen one trailer for the new set of games so far. What was it, Scarlet and Violet or something like that? Crimson and Violet, something like that. But it's like, we've only seen one trailer, but it seems like they're gonna stick with the Legends Arceus formula, where it's gonna be like an open world games from now on. So it's like, if that's gonna be the case, that might suck me back in, and I'll start buying the mainline ones again. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see, because again, we've only seen one trailer so far, and that was months ago. What was that, February, I think? But the last one I want to talk about is Fire Emblem. Now, Fire Emblem, which originally came out in Japan in 1990, I believe. It was the one with Marth, Shadow Dragon, I believe it was called. Also had a different name in Japan, but throughout the 90s, RPGs and strategy games and stuff weren't as popular here in the States, or North America, I should say, which is part of the reason, like, every other Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, or as it was called back then, Dragon Warrior, those games, like, every other one was released. And Fire Emblem, like, never released outside of Japan, and like, a lot of people, my first hearing about it was from Smash Bros. Melee. You had characters like Marth and Roy, and then the trophies for them said, like, from Fire Emblem, Japan only, and it was like, it kind of started to pique my interest. Like, like, that sounds kind of cool, like a strategy game or something, like, because I remember I was like, yeah, I think it's like Vandal Heist, which is kind of more like Shining Force, but that's beside the point. And Martha actually became one of my favorite characters and one of my best characters. So then, 2 years later, it was announced that Fire Emblem, the new Fire Emblem game, which was the 7th game in the series, here in the States they just called it Fire Emblem, but some people refer to it as Fire Emblem 7, but whatever. It's the one with Lindis. We'll leave it at that. And it was like, that was coming. It was going to be the first one to be released internationally. I was like, oh, I can't wait to get that. So I did. I bought it. To this day, I've never beaten it, but I did play that game a lot. I actually skipped Sacred Stones, but I did get Path of Radiance for the GameCube, which those ones, I believe, both released the same year in 2005. I got that for Christmas that year. Then a couple of years later, 3 years, 2.5, whatever, when I got my Wii, I got Radiant Dawn, which was like the sequel to Path of Radiance. One of the first Wii games I bought, and it's still my favorite Fire Emblem game of all time. Then, as the years went on, we saw, like, the ones for the there was Shadow Dragon was remade for the DS, then we started getting ones for the 3DS, which were they were good, but not as good as, like, the older ones. And then there was, we've seen some spin-offs, like mobile games, which mobile games are really not my thing, but To teach their own, to each their own, excuse me. And then there was Fire Emblem Warriors, which was actually one of the games that made me buy the Switch, which I've talked about before, because, combining two of my favorite genres, and I'm actually so excited for that sequel, or other Fire Emblem Warriors game coming out in July, I believe, like the end of July. I'm definitely excited for that. But, yeah, those are just 4 of my favorite Nintendo franchises, the ones that, like I said, have the best stories. So, until next time, I hope you all enjoy your weekend, or the rest of your week, whatever, and as always, thanks for watching.